much for joining us on Conduit today. The roles are a little bit reversed. You're in the studio and I'm remote, but I really appreciate you coming in to talk with us at Conduit. Beth Coger, you are Justice of the Peace for Washington County, and you have been for a number of years. A lot of our viewers will be familiar with you, but first, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement here in Washington County.
Okay, well, I'm happy to be here. The last time I was here, has been several years ago, and I was interviewed in this very spot by Patrick Deakins at the time. It was
Wow.
about jail reform, justice reform.
Hmm.
So my husband and I moved here to Washington County from Yale County in 2015. I was a paralegal in a law firm in Russellville, same law firm for 43 years.
Wow.
And I was a paralegal. I did billing and bookkeeping and just like we were talking, I wore all
Yeah.
the hats of the law firm. And then when I retired in 2013, we moved here in 2015, and I was watching the Quorum Court online, but I wasn't paying a lot of attention. I mean, I read about it in the paper. I see. And then one night in January of 2019, I went to my first Quorum Court meeting.
Okay.
And I've only missed a couple of meetings since then. And that's how I got involved in county government by going to that meeting. And that's how I got really started
Yeah.
advocating. And a friend of Sarah Moore was there that night, and she and I did not know each other before then, but we formed a nonprofit, Arkansas Justice Reform Coalition.
Yeah.
Now, I'm no longer on the board or involved. I mean, I volunteer there and I help, but Sarah is the executive director, and I'm still very much involved, but I'm not on the board or an officer or anything now.
And so you've been on the
So,
quorum court for how long? For how many years?
this is my fourth year,
Okay.
second. So I've been there 2 terms, and I'm
Okay.
running again for the next term. I
Okay.
should win. I don't have an opponent.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, I'll just address the elephant in your room. Right now we're in the middle
Okay.
of primary runoffs and of course the general and Conduit I'm seeing in a lot of places. Well, Conduit is no longer Republican. They're not conservative and they're working with the Democrats. And so they'll probably take this interview and say, case in point, there she is with a Democrat because you are registered as a Democrat. And
Well, actually,
so,
I'm registered as optional,
oh, optional. Well,
but
then there you go, Beth. Yeah,
I do align with the Democratic Party on
sure.
most things, and so that's true. But I'm registered
Well,
as optional.
yeah, and I guess I would say to that because I was thinking about it, there has been a lot of bipartisan work done, not just in Washington County, but on the state level. And I think people really resonate with the fact that accountability, transparency, being good stewards of Arkansans' tax dollars, those issues know no party. And I
Right.
think that's why you're seeing, strange bedfellows at times because it's not a left or right issue. It's not Republican or Democrat. This is just what is best for Arkansans and how are we, stewarding their dollars and bringing accountability to government.
Well, that's a very good point, and I would really believe you're right on that because I have a lot of Republican friends, and I have a lot of Democratic friends, and I have a lot of independent friends.
Yeah,
But I have been working with the Republicans on the Quorum Court somewhat as much as we I've been able
sure.
to,
Yeah,
and so that's very true. It's important because we're elected by the people to represent
mhm,
everybody. I think
yeah,
the Quorum Court should be like the city council and be nonpartisan.
yeah.
Uh,
That's interesting.
but we're not. But
Yeah.
if you get on the Quorum Court, as I did when I feel a huge responsibility, especially when it comes to spending taxpayer dollars, because I know firsthand how hard people work for their money, and I
Yeah.
want to see it, used correctly and in the best ways.
How have you seen the body, the quorum court, but then also Washington County local government change since you first took that seat?
How it has changed.
Mm-hmm.
I know on the Quorum Court and from the county, from where I sit, that it's not as friendly, it's not as respectful.
Mm,
Uh, it's not as dignified. Often there's a lack of decorum, complete lack of decorum, I would
yeah.
say many times. And but still on the quorum court, I have been able to work across the aisle a few times. And a part of one of those times was just last week or the week before that. So we are getting things done, but we need to do a lot more. But
Yeah.
when I know on the quorum court, uh, a, a good majority of the JPs won't stand up to the judge. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is because if you dare cross Judge Deakins or challenge him or call him out on something like, well, like on anything really, you're a target, and
Yeah.
he does not forget. And
Well,
I
yeah.
know there's a lot of people who would disagree with some of the things that I've tried to do, but I still deserve to be respected, and so does everyone else who comes to court, the people who come to the court, the people every day. We should be respected or we should be heard.
I agree with you. And I think, looking back a few months at the October quorum court meeting, um, that was when your mic was cut off several times.
Uh,
And some JPs agreed with you and sided with you, but what you're saying also, from what I've heard, from fear of retaliation or whatever, they really didn't get involved. Just that level of hostility, especially, was on display in that October regular quorum court meeting.
I can't remember that specifically, but
You're
there's been
probably like, there's so many.
but oh, it happens all the time. So there's been so many times when the judge has refused to recognize me as a
Mm,
JP. And to be recognized, we push her button and the light comes on. And it comes on green. And then when he pushes the button, it comes on red. And we can speak. So I know it was a meeting when he removed Joe Maynard from the planning
mm,
board. I asked to speak and he wouldn't recognize me. And I called a point of order on it or called him out on it. And he said, he acknowledged that I was wanting to speak, but he said, I'm not going to recognize you.
mm,
And so as time has gone on, I've gotten better at calling points of order, like for lack
mm,
of decorum and for other things like that. But
mm.
it's still a uphill battle a lot of times.
Yeah, there have been several issues that Conduit News has pointed out, whether it's most recently, and I do want to talk about this, the IDA ordinance,
Hmm.
some of the FOIA issues, the planning board. Since you first mentioned that, a lot of people said that Joe Maynard, who of course is one of the co-founders of Conduit, and he was appointed to the board by Deacons,
Yes.
was wrongfully removed from the board in the way that was handled. What are your thoughts on how all of that happened?
Well, he was wrongfully removed. There's no doubt about that. We got an email from Judge Deakins. When I say we, the quorum court, the
Hmm.
JPs, got an email from Judge Deakins the day that it happened, that he was going to reappoint all the existing board members and then add two new ones because of, I can't think of the act number, because of the new law that was passed,
Yeah.
the planning boards. But when it came down to it, he read off every name except Joe Maynard. And like I said, that's when I tried to be recognized. He wouldn't recognize me. But the next day, I sent a letter to Brian Lester and the judge, and pretty sure I copied the quorum court, bringing out the fact that to remove someone from the board, you have to have a two-thirds vote, and he did not have a two-thirds vote that night.
Mm.
And that's not, don't forget, he told us he was going to reappoint everybody.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that was,
that just goes to show again. I don't know what happened with Patrick and Mr. Maynard, but that just goes to show that if you dare challenge or call him out, probably going to be in trouble.
well, tell me about the the issues of the Freedom of Information Act and how you
I
have
love it.
requested, how you have
I love the
requested.
Freedom of Information Act.
Well, Conduit does too. You may remember, back in 2023, the special session, the governor's administration and legislators tried to gut it, and Conduit fought really hard to keep that intact. Because if you can't see what your government's doing, what do you have? Um, but there has been several FOIA lawsuits, and correct me where I'm wrong, and then where the judge has ruled that the county did not, well, they violated the FOIA Act,
Right.
and the judge and the county attorney basically appealed those decisions
They
using
did. They
tax
appealed.
dollars to basically fight, the release of documents that already belong to the people.
Yes. So I want to give some background because people
Yes, please
listening may
do.
not understand. So the first lawsuit that I filed over the Freedom of Information Act was now this happened when Judge Joseph Wood was county judge.
Okay.
Uh, they would not, they said the JSAP committee, which is Job Evaluation and Salary Administration Program, was not a public meeting, was not a public body. And we argued back and forth on that, back and forth. And I practically begged to get notice of the meeting so
Hmm.
I could go. And at the time, there were two JPs on the committee, Lisa Ecke and Butch Pond. And I even talked to them, and they were like, well, you need to talk to HR. And of course, I did. Anyway, after
Yeah.
trying, I finally got to the point where I'd had it. And so I drafted my own lawsuit. I think it was like 70 something pages
Oh my gosh.
and with all kinds of exhibits. I threw everything out, which I'm
Uh-huh.
glad I did. It turned
Sure.
out to be a good thing that I did because we had a 2-day trial, and let me tell you, it was exhausting. But yeah,
Yeah.
so that first lawsuit was over. I wanted admission to the JSAP committee, and the JSAP committee would hear things. It had involved all other elected officials: the county clerk, the circuit
Mhm.
clerk, prosecutor, the sheriff, the assessor, the collector. I can't remember, I don't know who I'm leaving out there, but all the other elected officials and judges, they could come too.
Okay.
And so they would talk about if someone had, say, the prosecutor had someone in his office that had been really doing a really good job, and he wanted to raise them up a step on the pay grade, then
Hmm.
they'd vote on that at that meeting, and it would be done. Now, so then after I won my lawsuit, uh, I won my lawsuit in December of 2022, and then that we got a judgment filed in January, and the county wouldn't pay me.
Mm.
So
Wow.
on and on. Finally, I had to hire an attorney. I hired Steve Zager to represent me, and he
Okay.
filed a writ of execution. And for those who don't know, a writ of execution is issued by the clerk, and it's delivered to the sheriff. And the sheriff is supposed to pick up county property, whatever that is. He could pick up a vehicle or enough property to sell at auction and pay my judgment. So they eventually did end up paying my judgment, but I had to after had to hire an attorney. But then I got
Goodness.
judgment from my attorney's fees, so they had to pay me that too. But I mean, that's just an unfortunate case. The people who really paid that are the taxpayers of Washington County.
Right.
It didn't come out
Right.
of a judge's pocket or the county attorney pocket. It came out of our taxpayer pocket. So I'm not proud that that happened, but I'm glad that I was in such a position that I could pursue that and that I won that case.
Well, now, but
But
that
so
wasn't the only.
no,
Well,
I
go
thought things
ahead.
would be better, but they weren't.
So tell us what happened after all of that.
So after I won my first lawsuit, again, that was when Judge Wood was here.
Hmm.
That was the judgment was entered in January 27th of 2023. Well, then February 7th of 2023, there was another committee, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, and
Okay.
that was formed back in 2017 when we got the Crisis Stabilization Unit in Fayetteville
Yes.
in Northwest Arkansas.
Uh-huh.
That's when that CJCC was formed. But part of their job was to look at ways for justice reform and how we could decrease the population at the jail while still keeping the community safe and doing all that we
Sure.
needed to do. So that was a very important committee. And they had a meeting on that day, and I called the judge. And, well, first of all, the director of the CJCC at the time was Drew Smith. She's the one who informed me just a few minutes before the meeting was supposed to start that it was going to be a closed meeting. And it was something to do with Zoom wasn't supported anymore or something. But that didn't matter. It doesn't
Sure.
matter that Zoom wasn't, it should still have been an open meeting.
Right.
And so we had a few words back and forth. And uh, so um, the judge was in Little Rock at a judges conference. No, that was the next week. Never mind. Okay, I'm
Okay.
getting. So then after January, I mean, after February 7th, 3 or 4 days later, there was another CJCC meeting, and they also closed it. So
Wow.
that's when I called the judge and asked him to fix it. And I used to have the text message where he told me that it wasn't in his wheelhouse. It wasn't for him. I had to contact Drew Smith.
Okay.
And of course, I'd already done that. And so I was like, okay, I'll handle it. And I handled it by
Hmm.
contacting a lawyer and filing another lawsuit, which cost the county. I won that FOIA lawsuit. And okay, so Patrick had asked, I'm sorry, Judge Dickinson had asked me during a phone call after this second meeting. He said, Beth, I need you to help me to make these meetings closed,
Mm.
private. And I was like, Judge, that's a hill I will die on. No,
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
And I testified to that in trial.
Now, why did he want one? I think it's interesting that he came to you thinking that you would help him make those meetings
Well, he was
closed.
returning my call.
Okay. Okay. But he wanted the meetings closed.
He told me, Beth, we need to make those meetings private, and I would like for you to help me make them private.
Hmm.
And that's when I said that's a hill I will die on.
Sure. And then what happened from there?
So we filed the lawsuit and won. And during the, if you look at the trial transcript, and it
Hmm.
was appealed, so there is a transcript on record. Brian Lester, county attorney, admitted that the county messed up.
Mm.
But then after the judge ruled in my favor, uh, the county appealed it, and they got an appropriation for the quorum court. I abstained, of course, for that one, for $20,000 to hire outside law firm. So they hired a outside law firm to do the appeal. And when there was no need, I mean, in my opinion, it was
Sure.
just a waste of money. And they'd already admitted that they had messed up, but they appealed on some other issue dealing with another statute that they said uh, overrode or the FOIA Act. And the Court of Appeals disagreed with that. And then they awarded me judgment for my lower court. I already had a judgment for my lower court. They affirmed that. And then they awarded me attorney fees for the appeal because it
So
was
how many,
hard for me to pay an attorney.
yeah, I'm sure. And for it to go through those courts and then the appeal, how many FOIA lawsuits have there been total?
I don't know total. I know that I
Okay.
filed two, and
Okay.
uh, I don't I don't know about others.
I mean, what do you think that says about um
Well, they like to, they talk about transparency, but not let, I mean, it's just ridiculous if you think about it. Why would you not let people attend a meeting when it's
mhm,
obvious all the elected officials there, they're making decisions about taxpayer dollars, uh, as to the JSAP committee, and then on the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, uh, they could have made one phone call that day and said,
yeah.
look, it has to be an open meeting, but no one did, and that's when I filed the second lawsuit.
Something else that I want to ask you about that I know that you've seen has been the dissolvement of longstanding committees.
Yes.
And walk us through those that you'd like to mention, and then
Okay.
help us understand why that is significant, and um, why would the committees be dissolved in the first place? And then there's one that we can talk about um, the um, the law library board and the money that I think people are still wondering where that even is at this point. So talk to us about all of that.
Okay. Do you want me to start with the Law Library Board?
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, because I
Okay.
think that one's so
So
just,
and it's very interesting. So
it
the
is
Law
interesting.
Library Fund, a Law Library Board, the Law Library Fund had its own account in the county budget until this year. It's no longer in the county budget because County Attorney Catherine Baker and the judge said together that since the quorum court did not have control over that, we didn't appropriate that money, that it shouldn't be included in the budget. So I don't see the monthly update on that like I did before it was taken
Hmm.
out of the budget. But the Law Library Fund is paid fines and fees that come in from criminal defendants and court
Okay.
and for filings. And it is an independent board, but they're supposed to be recommended by the Washington County Bar Association, and then the judge appoints them. We
Hmm.
don't, the quorum, that's one board that the quorum court did not
Okay.
have to confirm. But anyway, so it got to a point where the judge decided he wanted some of the money that the law library had. And so in early fall of last year, he paid off, he and Catherine Baker, with her approval, her name is on the warrant. They paid off a vehicle that was privately owned by Nick Robinson Returning Home, and to the tune of $36,000 out of the law library fund. Also, along that same time, they paid for a dishwasher at the Washington County Detention Center, and that was like 5,300. And also, they spent $25,000 of law library fund to paint the interior of the former women's prison. And so I was asking about the vehicle one night in a meeting, the month that it happened, because I saw the
Okay.
expenditure. I contacted the comptroller to see what it was, and that's when I asked for documents and saw that it was a payoff to Arvest Bank for a vehicle owned by Returning Home. So when I was asking about that in the meeting, the judge, who was not on the committee, but he was in the audience, got up during the meeting and interrupted me and said I'd have to take that up with the law library board. Well, when I tried to do that, I found that he had the
Dissolved
law
it.
library was all in a turmoil. No one knew who was on the board, and but Catherine Baker had been put on the board, deputy county
Okay.
attorney, and
Huh.
at one point it had Brian Lester's name on there, but now later his name came off. So honestly, I don't know who's on the board right now.
Okay.
I do know that Kelsey Bogan, the attorney who is president of the Washington County Bar, has filed a lawsuit against Patrick Deakins and the county over the law library fund. So likely at some point, some of that money, hopefully all of that money, will have to be paid back to the library board. But I don't know that, but that could
Sure.
happen.
Yeah. Did you get answers though about about the vehicle? That seems like a strange action.
The answer that I got from the judge, and I think it was during that same meeting, was that they were going to use that vehicle. It was a van, like a cargo van. They were
Okay.
going to use that van for transport. We have transport vans at the detention center and the juvenile detention center. We already have transport vans. So why
Sure.
did we pay off one that's the count for a private entity, a nonprofit returning home?
Right. Yeah, that's
That's the that's the only response that I ever got that I got from the judge on that was I should go to the library board, which I tried to do, and that's when I found out no
you're
one knew
like,
who
I
the
don't know
board
who
was,
it is.
and then that I should you know do that. So I don't know. That's all I
Um,
ever heard.
yeah, what about okay, so that's the law library board. What about other boards that you've seen similar action take place?
Okay, so I guess when people are listening to this, they might hear me
Hmm.
talk about some of these committees and boards and say they might be in agreement that we didn't need this or that.
Sure.
But I want people to pay attention to how the judge went about getting rid of, dissolving, or ending these.
Okay.
Because, for instance, let's start with the environmental department. Washington County had an entire environmental department until it was budgeted in 2024 for $255,835. And then uh, the entire department. Okay, so the way that we on the Quorum Court learned that we no longer had an environmental department was when we got the budget for 2025 and it had environmental zero.
Oh, God.
So that's how we learned that had been disbanded or dissolved or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And I think the environmental department is important. I think that
Sure.
we should have that. But the judge just canceled it on his own. But now, when I say the judge did this on his own, he had to have support from the quorum court too, from a
Okay.
majority of the quorum court. He couldn't have done a lot of this
Well,
stuff
and
if he was.
that's what I was wondering. Does that not have to come before the quorum court for that
It
to
should
happen,
have,
or
in
should
my
it?
opinion, before you take a budget of 255,000 and make it go to zero and no longer have a department of environmental affairs. That's a legislative body decision, not an executive for the county judge. because, and I say that because we had already appropriated money for that for 2024, and we're ready to do it again.
Sure.
Uh, and then he
So,
just,
well, and it's not like that, that line item just goes to a zero, or maybe it does, but I would think that those funds would then be diverted somewhere else. Is that not how it?
well, if we don't use that 255,000 for the environmental department, it goes back into the pot of money that is used for something else, yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was
I mean, it would
thinking.
be hard to track that specific
Yeah.
$255. I don't know how you would do that. But
Well,
yes, the money.
you can just
And
look
so
at some of the salary raises and maybe wonder.
when Judge Deakins talks about how he saved over $2 million or something like that, people need to ask him exactly what county services and were cut to do that.
Okay. So we've got the law library board, we've got the environmental one. What else
Uh-huh.
have you seen?
Well, next I would like to talk about the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee because
Okay.
that's very close to my heart.
Sure.
So I told you kind of how it got started in 2017 when we got the CSU. Well, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee was appointed by Judge Wood, and they had been functioning, having regular meetings. I think they were having 3 meetings a month. They had 3 different departments. Program. I can't remember what all the departments right now, but anyway, this one committee had 3 different groups, and then
Hmm.
they would meet, and that's one of the that was my second FOIA lawsuit where I filed to attend those
Okay.
meetings. And they had just voted unanimously to pursue pretrial services. And that's something I've been pushing for since 2019,
Hmm.
pretrial services.
Hmm.
And then the next thing that happened is we got a letter from the judge. The judge Deacon sent a letter to prosecutor Matt Durrett at the time because he was co-chair of the CJCC, telling him that it wasn't a legal committee because people had served longer than their terms were allowed. So
Okay.
I drafted an ordinance to make it easier for the judge to appoint people to the board, and I didn't have the votes to get that passed. So that's an example of when the Quorum
Sure.
Court helped enable him to do
Okay.
that. And
Yeah.
at one meeting not too long ago, it was last year, I asked him if he was ever going to have the CJCC again, and he said no. So he never
Okay.
intended to appoint new people. It was just,
Yeah. A way to get rid of it. It wasn't on his agenda.
yeah,
And so you're right. This is, a talking point of his in this campaign has been, well, I've saved the county what does he say? 2 million,
I think
3.
something like that.
But when you look at how these boards have been dissolved, you're right. That's one way that he
That's one way
could
you can do that.
justify.
And also, half of the judge's salary is paid by the road department. Now, I mean, I never understood that, and I really
Mhm.
don't, I can't really explain that, but I can tell you it's a fact. Half of the county judge's salary is paid from the road department, and the rest from the county. Um,
Well, and
so,
I'm sure you've seen Conduit has done an article about the spending and the salaries um, of the Washington County elected, mainly the judge, county attorney, deputy county attorney. And listen, people were coming at us like, that's not true. That's not his salary, X, Y. And we have said over and over, you can go to the Washington County website and see it yourself.
that may have happened on my watch. I honestly don't know, but I was unaware of it
Yeah,
when it
yeah.
happened.
What else? What else would you want people to know?
Okay, well, next, I have a lot. So
I
next
have
though,
to.
I want to talk about. So we had a wonderful community correction center here in Washington County in Northwest Arkansas. It was a women's prison, Northwest
Okay,
Arkansas Community Correction Center, and it housed women who had been through the justice system. They had been sentenced, and not all of them were from Washington County, but a good part of them were.
okay.
And so they would go through it, but people wanted to get in this program. I mean, when I worked in Russell, we tried to, if we had a
Hmm.
woman who was facing time, we would try to get her up here. So it was
Okay,
recognized as a national model. And
okay.
so we had a lease agreement with the Arkansas Department of Corrections, we, the county, since I think 2017 or 20, maybe even longer than that, but and they paid it $1 a year. So the county judge decided that they should pay market value rent. But it turns
Wow.
out that his ideal of market value rent was something like $2.3 million.
Wow.
So, I mean, so I talked to people on the Board of Corrections at the time, specifically Benny Magnus, and he would tell me they were trying to work things out. And he
Mm,
really, we had a couple of phone calls at least where he was optimistic that they were still going to stay there. But
it
that
didn't
didn't
happen.
happen. So because the county judge wanted to increase their rent, not, I don't think market value is 2.3 million. It's very,
Yeah.
but real estate agents could tell you that. They ended up just cutting
Coming
it down, transferring the women to other places. But no one, unless you knew what a great place that was, it did not look like a jail. It was a beautiful place, even though it was originally a jail. There were no
in.
bars, there were no doors. The women were in these little cell areas like pods, and they had
Hmm.
beautiful artwork that they had done. Every wall in there had a beautiful scene where the women had
Sure.
painted.
Yeah.
It was just a wonderful place. And like I said, a national model. And when we had the criminal justice assessment study in 2020, they called it out as being a national.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so for us, that was that hurt a lot of
It was a
people
loss.
when
Yeah.
that closed. And I would say also a lot of these programs that I'm talking about and that I will bring up if I get to go on like that, hurt some of our most vulnerable people, people who can't push back, people who aren't able to stand up
Mm, yeah.
but a lot of the actions of our county judge has hurt a lot of people in Washington County, and it's very unfortunate. Is the county had an agreement with Ozark Regional Transit where the
Okay.
county paid 28 in 2023, the last year it was funded, it was 28,700. That's not even a 1%. That's
Sure.
a very small amount compared to our 130 million dollar budget now. But again, that's another program that the county judge cut that we weren't told about until it was already done. And I heard about that one from Joel Gardner, who is a director, I think, at Ozark Regional Transit. And
Mhm.
but the reason that was important is because we have a lot of people who don't have transportation, and they don't have
Mhm.
whether they have reliable transportation or no transportation at all out in the county. And
Mhm.
people were using that to come to court dates and to keep court dates and court appointments.
Okay.
And that really hurt a lot of people when that was cut. And there's no reason for it to be cut. Like I said, it's a small amount. It helped a lot of people, and we weren't the only ones. The cities contribute to that. Benton County contribute. I think Benton County still contributes to it.
Okay.
That's another example of something was cut that we didn't know. We on the Quorum Court didn't know about. And the next one I'd like to talk about, got two more, I think. I want to
Yeah.
talk about the HIV clinic.
Okay.
So the HIV clinic had been going on in Washington County and at the health department for at least 3 decades.
Okay.
And it kind of, I mean, I wasn't even aware of it until I heard that the county judge had decided that we couldn't afford that. And I've
Mm.
got letters here that show it, that he had written them in 2023 and 2024 and saying that we would not be funding the HIV clinic. The way I found out about that is I started getting calls from patients who go to the HIV clinic, and they were, I mean, I can't tell you, I have no idea how many calls I got, but people would call me and they'd be crying because
Mm.
they would say, Beth, I'm going to die.
Mm.
If this clinic closes, I can't get my medicine. There's no way I can pay for it. And the closest place would be Little Rock. And I
Okay.
don't have transportation. I won't be able to get to Little Rock. So there was a life and death situation for these people. Had been going on with the county for at least 3 decades. And the county judge Deacons decided that the county couldn't afford that anymore. He said we had other, let's see what,
Priorities.
uh, so I want to read part after it was canceled, and uh, the community came together and they came to the quorum court, and JP Suki Hires got an ordinance passed to fund the HIV clinic for another year,
Okay.
despite all this. I don't know what happened after that, but the next thing I hear from the people in the community is that it did close and it had moved to somewhere over on MLK, and the community clinic stepped in and took it over. But here's what the county judge said when he told us about it, us to Quorum Court. He said, "This represents a win for everyone involved. The patients will still see continued improved care, and the Washington County taxpayers are relieved of a burden that government should have never placed upon them. Another tentacle of the bloat of local government rectified, onwards and upwards."
Oh, wow.
I mean, we're talking about a clinic that saved people's lives, and
Yeah.
I made so many good friends over that I still talk to, and but that was just cut.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if I said the amount, it was 193,000 for 2024.
Okay.
Again, not 100, but it helped so many people,
Sure.
and it was a great community service that we
Service. You said you had one more after that one.
I do. I want to, but this is more like a resol. So I'm going to talk about a resolution that the county judge brought to the Quorum Court a few months
Okay.
ago. I think it
Okay.
started in September, October, somewhere last year. And it was for a resolution that the Quorum Court needed to pass in order for Ozark Electric to get revenue bonds under Amendment
I
65 of the
remember
Arkansas
this.
Constitution.
Okay.
Okay. And so I had all kinds of questions about that. And I know one day during when we were having that discussion, the reason it's so important that the county do that, Ozark Electric was going to get a huge tax abatement, and it
Mm-hmm.
was 65% for 30 years. 65% of their taxes they would make a payment in lieu of taxes for that for
Yeah.
30 years. And at the time, the resolution said 400,000 or a lesser or greater amount if the company should decide, if Ozark should decide. I spoke against it because my thinking was Ozark Electric is a big deal, and they have a lot of money. They told us at the time what their income was, but I don't remember it. They're going to go ahead and do this anyway. They're going to make
Sure.
these improvements. They're going to build that $40 million office in Springdale that they were talking about,
Yeah.
whether or not we do this. But
Right.
so this is going to. I was worried about the taxes, that the effect it was going to have on the school districts, especially
Mm-hmm.
because they would be losing all that tax money. And I voted against it, and JP Robert Massengill voted against it, but it passed. And when was in the county clerk's office recently, it turned out not to be 400,000. I'm sorry, 400 million. Okay,
Yeah.
not
I
400
know. I
million.
thought, I was like, I remember being
Okay,
a little
I'm
bit
sorry.
higher, but
I'm always doing that. It was 400 million, but actually what it turned out to be was 525 million. And the county judge negotiated that, if you want to call it negotiating.
sure.
It's a pretty good deal for the Ozark, without the county assessor being
Oh,
involved.
really? Okay.
Mhm.
I didn't know that. Talk to us
Yeah, I
about,
asked about that.
you did. Talk to us about the planning ordinance or the rezoning ordinance. That went on for several months. That was a long, drawn out fight, really.
Yeah.
Give us your perspective on all that was happening.
The way that came to the Quorum Court, it was a surprise to me for some reason, even though I'd heard background
Hmm.
noise about it. But it came to the court, and the way they did it, they well, let me go back a bit. I thought that the Northwest Arkansas Regional Council, I thought they were working on it with them. And so I did a FOIA request after it came up, and I found a letter in October of 2023 where the county judge of Deacons had written a letter to the Northwest Arkansas Council saying we didn't need their services anymore. We're going to do it on our own from here. So
Okay.
that ordinance, actually, it took a bunch of old ordinances, even from as far back as 2026, and combined them into one. And there were several things in there that concerned me. And I did not want the county judge to be making decisions about planning board decisions.
Sure.
And I did not want the planning director to make decisions because the planning director works at the
Pleasure.
will of the county judge.
Yeah. Pleasure of the.
We have a
Mhm.
great planning director. He's great at his job. Dr. Ada is, But I was worried about the concentration of power that that ordinance would have put in the county judge. Now, we did
Hmm.
some things changed, but there's still things in there that shouldn't have been included. For instance, there's one thing in there that allows the county judge to not get bids for building projects. I can't remember exactly what that's called, but he doesn't have to get bids for that. And I thought that was wrong. And I made a motion and tried to remove it from the,
Hmm.
or, but again, he had the votes on the quorum court to keep doing that.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
it ended up being in there. We did make some changes, and I agree that, but there's so many, we have examples all around us of what other areas are doing when it comes
mhm.
to planning and development. And what this ordinance would have done would it have made every major highway, like 412 and every major highway would have been commercial, which means, first of all, there's no infrastructure for that right now.
Right.
And that would have been, think what that would have done to rural Washington County. So
Yeah.
we went on for several months and it didn't get much attention. And I asked the county judge and county attorney to have public meetings out in the county.
Hmm.
And he told me I could do that if I wanted to, but they were not doing it. And I didn't feel qualified to hold county meetings about it because I knew there was a lot of things about it that I didn't know.
Hmm.
So finally, it turned out there's actually a statute that says it has to go through the planning board. So we did have that one meeting,
I
and
remember.
leading up to that, the community got so involved.
Hmm.
It was
Hmm.
amazing how
Yeah.
many
That
how
was
many
one of those
showed up.
times
And
where, regardless of where you fell on, as far as party lines or whatever, that was another issue that really just brought a lot of people together.
yeah, and I've got friends from that I made that I still talk to all the time too. But I was very concerned because
Yeah.
it looked like from his history was telling me that it was going to pass. And it did pass, but not as bad as it originally started out to be.
Yeah. And then also, most recently, that I think people will remember and be familiar with is the Industrial Development Authority.
Yes.
That ordinance and you mentioned the Northwest Arkansas Council. I believe is it Ron Maloney with Northwest Arkansas
Well,
Council?
so I may have I get them mixed up. Washington
Yeah.
County Planning, maybe it was Regional Planning.
Okay.
It's where Mr. I can't think of his name now. He's now on the Water Board.
Now, I do know that the
Tim
IDA,
Conklin is
okay, I do
the,
know that the IDA was Northwest Arkansas Council. That's
okay.
certain.
Oh, so
Hmm.
when the IDA came, now I don't know if Judge Deakins campaigned for that in the background. He didn't, as
Yeah.
far as I know, publicly campaign for that. But that had a lot of concerns. That was very worrisome because it would take away a lot of the power that we, the quorum court, had over what would
Yeah.
happen in rural Washington County. And I got criticized for saying that but it's really, it's true. They were going to have almost limitless power. That act gives them the authority to condemn property, and they can make their own bylaws
Hmm.
and organize the way they want to. They do their own hiring and firing. They set their own salaries. And there was even a part in there that said that if the federal government or any agency of the federal government needed the IDA property, uh, they could get it. And if there was a
Wow.
judgment, if the federal government condemned property and they got a judgment against them, we that we'd be liable. The IDA would be liable for that.
Yeah. You know what's
So where are they
interesting
going to
to
get the
me?
money for that?
Yeah. You know what's interesting to me when I look at a lot of these ordinances and things that have been pushed through or advocated for or proposed by Republicans, they're completely antithetical to what we, especially Republicans, say that they believe, in limited government, less government, constraining power. Um, Property rights is a big deal. And when you look at a lot of actions taken by Republican leaders, it just makes you scratch your head and be like, "What am I missing something? Did I did?"
I completely agree, and
And some of these, like property rights, you and I can agree that that's again a universal principle I think that we all value, and that's why everyone could come together on a lot of those issues. But like the zoning ordinance, a concentration of power, what Republican in their right mind when you advocate for limited government um, would propose things like that. But
I don't
then
know.
if you call it out, Beth, if you call it out, you're the bad person and you're
Mhm.
being divisive and you're not conservative. I mean, that's what we're seeing right now. You know it.
Yeah, oh, well, I see that all the time, and I don't know. It takes a lot of courage to stand up to the county judge in a meeting or even outside of a meeting, I guess. Um, but I take my job as being a JP very seriously, and I have the largest district as far as population, not
Mm-hmm.
land wise, but
Yeah.
population. And I interact with the people in the county a lot. And I went to a meeting today in Farmington, even though Farmington is not in my district, but I went to talk to them about the job of the quorum court and all. And I just I don't know. We need to be working together, and we need to be working together for the betterment of everyone in Washington County, not
Yeah.
just a few, which kind of seems like we're doing right now. But
Do you feel like, there are multiple times that you, and I don't really see this behavior with that many other JPs from the county judge, but when you're silenced, and I mean, I'll just be honest, sometimes I'll watch it and it just makes me shake my head because it can be so just patronizing the way that JPs are spoken to and disrespectful. And like you said, like regardless of how you feel or what you believe about the issue, there should be that level of decorum and respect, especially because you are doing the people's business and it's not about them. But do you ever feel like, this disenfranchises the people in your area at all?
oh, I know it does. I have
Okay.
people say to me, I don't know how you do it.
Mm,
I couldn't do it. And I would never, they'll say, I would never run for a public office to be treated like that. But I want to give a little background. So when I worked for those 43 years in the law firm, I guess I had a very privileged life. I had a great job there. People
yeah.
listened to me. My opinion was respected,
Mm,
and I asked questions and got answers, and I oversaw budget for 4 lawyers at a time. And you should try. That's not easy
yeah.
because believe me, they always had something they wanted to spend money on that
Sure. Yeah.
so we would go back and forth, but they were always respectful. No one had
Mm,
ever. So then I come up here to Washington County, I get on the quorum court, and I'm called a liar.
mm,
I'm a troublemaker, all kinds of stuff, and I'm treated in public meetings like I'm less than, or
yeah.
I shouldn't be there. He doesn't want me there, and again, I'll come back. He would not be able to do that if some members of the quorum court didn't assist him in doing that.
Yeah.
Because
And that,
when I call point of order, he's, I've called point of order numerous times, dozens of times. He's ruled against me every time.
mm,
Every time he rules against me, if I appeal, which I usually do, I've never been, they always sustain him and go with him. So
how does that make you
that,
feel?
that makes me feel like the others don't like me also, and that I'm not, maybe I shouldn't be there. Maybe they think I shouldn't be there
Well, but the
because,
voters think that you should, Beth. I mean,
I'm sorry.
the people that voted for you
Well,
think,
it's interesting. I mean, there was a point in my life if someone talked to me like that, I would probably have cried.
mm,
Uh, but I've never come, only one time have I come close to crying when the judge was really on me about something. And other than that, it makes me feel stronger. It
mm,
makes me feel more determined, and it makes me realize that there are people watching me, and I'm not going to back down. I'm going to keep doing what is right. And I always try to explain my votes.
mm,
And if I don't get to explain them during a meeting, well, then I try to explain them in my weekly newsletter as to how or why I voted the way that I
yeah.
voted. And I
Yeah.
think that's important. And even though like this last week, I got a couple of angry calls. Well, not angry, but people, I won't say angry, people disagreed with me because I made a motion to move a resolution that was on the full quorum court meeting. I made a motion to move it
To
to
move it
a
back to
committee
the,
meeting, to
hmm
back to committee.
yeah, I saw
But
that.
we don't have to agree on everything. Even though
Sure.
they didn't agree with me and they were upset that I did that. It's what should have happened. That resolutions should always go through the committee and then on the quorum court for transparency for one thing, for knowledge for another thing. That when we have hearings and we have the public, that's how we learn things.
Right.
So the more information we have when we make a decision,
Yeah.
the it's likely to be better for everyone if we know more. So that's why I made that motion. But that just shows that you can disagree, but you can also be respectful when you disagree.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, but you mentioned your newsletter, and I want to talk about this before we let you go. Your newsletter is so thorough. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, "Do you read Beth Coger's weekly newsletter?" And it's elected officials could really take note of how you do that and how open and transparent you are and, following whether it's ordinances, resolutions, or tax dollars, meetings that
I
are coming up, what's going to be on the agenda. Like it's so how can people find your newsletter and what would you want to tell people about that?
I would love to have more people sign up for my newsletter. My email is ejcoger@gmail.com, ejcoger@gmail.com, and I'll get you added to my list. The reason I started the newsletter is when I first started going to Quorum Court, you could look on YouTube. All our meetings are on YouTube, or they're
Yeah.
supposed to be. And there would be like maybe, I don't know, a handful or maybe a dozen or so people who had watched a meeting. Now, if you look at meetings, on the YouTube and see how many have watched. It's in the hundreds. I wish it was
Uh-huh.
more. But
Yeah.
so my goal was to keep people informed. The county could be doing a lot better job of that itself. They post meetings on the calendar, but you have to know how to find the calendar if
Yes. Well, and
and
also sometimes the calendar that's up at the top right corner it does not link or have the same things linked if you go, to Find My Government, Quorum Court. Sometimes, the agenda packets aren't always
they're
there,
not
and so
over.
you
Yeah.
really you do have to know how to navigate it.
It's I think that the court secretary that we have now is very good at making sure the agenda gets posted with on, but you have to know how to click to find it.
Sure.
And so what I do in my newsletter is I provide a link that here, the agenda here, and they can click on
Yes.
it. And
Yeah.
I break down. I try to be very concise. Now, sometimes I do put my own opinion in, but it's my newsletter.
It
But
is your newsletter.
I do try to I stick to facts mostly. If I have to back something up, I can back it up with receipts.
Sure. Yes. Um, okay, I said before we let you go, but one more question, and then you can let me know if there's anything else you'd like to add. But um, the runoff, the Republican runoff, you mentioned you were registered optional. I'm not going to ask you what you've done in this runoff or if you voted or what ballot you pulled, but just give us, you've got now Tim Shepard, who's captain of the police department, running now against the current judge, and then the winner of that will then go on and face the Democrat in the fall. What are you hearing about this runoff, and just give us your opinion on it?
Well, my opinion, I'm very worried because it's going to come down to the number of people who come out to vote. And the last Republican primary runoff for county judge, the current county judge won by 18 votes.
Hmm.
That could happen again. And I don't know what to do to get people out. And I do know that just having that one early voting space, open space, has probably hurt some too. But I just want people to realize how important that position is and to get out and vote to talk to the candidates and get out and support the one they think will do the best job.
Yeah.
Because we,
Only because you mentioned it. We've talked about this. Why does Washington County only have one? one place to vote, early voting. When I look around everywhere else, even
Yeah,
in really
someone,
small towns, they've got multiple locations for early voting.
I honestly do not know. I
Okay.
have slacked off on going to some election commission meetings that I should have, but I do know that our election commission coordinator does a wonderful job. And there
Okay.
must have been a very good reason or reasons
Sure.
why she couldn't get more open. Or maybe it's just it could be because it's a primary runoff. I don't, and the turnout is expected to be so low. I don't know, but at least on
Okay.
election day, there's going to be voting precincts out in the county. So I
Yeah.
don't know why.
Okay. Well, Beth, it's such a pleasure talking to you, and we appreciate your knowledge and just the way that you are a watchdog for local government. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you do want to cover?
Well, I kind of wanted to say that the county judge, Patrick Diggins, has a way of attacking people, and he's probably going to, when he sees this, he's not going to be happy, and he's probably going to say, I'm lying. He's called me a liar in a public meeting before. So but I just want to say that I have the receipts. I have all my receipts, and I have receipts that I haven't even talked about or haven't even used. So I'm ready for that. And I'm just kind of expecting that. But I want people in the county to pay attention because the
Hmm.
county judge is so important, and
Yeah.
get out and talk to the candidates and make a wise choice and go vote. That would be my message.
Well, thank you so much. And you're as you were years ago in that interview
Yeah.
with uh, Judge Deakins. He wasn't judge, but you're always welcome here on Conduit, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.